Imagine a world without choices. Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. UIC.
Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. It is a natural right for every human being to be free. Free, so free. So the government is there to protect you and me. UIC objective is to liberate the citizens from colonial bondage, them regulation, them taxation. Rob Jamaica, we independent. Be stronger together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I.
Imagine a world without choices. Imagine you can't make it.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. This is Joseph Patterson, President for UIC. And tonight we're going to talk about something very, very interesting. And it's the response of Lisa Hanna to the current politician pay raise. Let me call it a crisis, no? Because clearly it's a crisis of our political system. So Ms. Anna has written an article and has gotten some news coverage about the whole matter, which I think is worthy of a thoughtful response from the UIC and in particularly from myself. So I'm going to share with you what I think about her article, which I'm going to read for you from The Observer, and I'm also going to dissect it a little bit and then give you an overall summary of what we might want to take away from the whole matter. So good evening to all of you who are on. We're joining me tonight. I see Deborah Williams, Cheryl, and Gangster Page, and another 42 of you, 52, growing. So yes, so we're going to talk about this very important matter here. I hope you have had a very good evening so far. I'm sure some of you are still getting home from work or trying to leave work. So I'm intruding on your time a little bit. Good evening, Christopher Lawrence. Good to see you on. A quick plug, you all know that we have a special event coming up on the 10th of June, which will be at the Mandela Park. So we're going to be having a very important event there that I hope you'll all be able to attend if you are in Jamaica and in the corporate area. Yeah, so let's begin. Let's just dive right into it. And so there's an article on the June 4th in The Observer. It's entitled A Tale of Two Jamaicas, Part 2 by Miss Lisa Hanna. And in this article, she begins by saying, I empathize with the immediate pushback on the salaries of parliamentarians, permanent secretaries, governor general, members of the Electoral Commission et al., especially against the background of a minimum wage earner receiving $776,000 per annum. So Ms. Anna is contextualizing for us that she sympathizes with those of us who have pushed back against the salary increases being mandated by the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and no doubt the Cabinet, and subsequently the opposition, with some amount of flip-flopping going on. Her article continued by saying, perhaps the increases should have also been structured over a more extended period of time to make it more agreeable to the public to accept. But the government has worked with the same pay scale for 37 years. So she's beginning to justify the situation by first pacifying us with the idea that maybe a prolonged period to phase in these very significant increases would have been better than just dropping it on us. And I must agree, it would have been a more effective strategy, but it would not have negated the fact that she's still advocating for, and they have given themselves a huge increase. Therefore, if judgment is to change the pay for parliament, therefore, she says, if the argument is to change the pay for parliamentarians, you must change the pay for all government workers. She's further making the case that, you broaden the whole thing, which is what Andrew did. He broadened the whole thing to try to placate us and get us ready for the big, massive impact. If this is the case, we must ask, what is the fair pay for the work carried out by a member of parliament relative to the other salaries in government and the Jamaican economy? Now, that is a very good question. What is the fair pay for parliamentarians? How do you assess the fair pay for parliamentarians? We're going to talk about that in a bit. I'm going to share with you my thoughts on how you establish fair pay for these parliamentarians. She continues, there will always be data that can support a person's position. For example, regarding Jamaica, some journalists and other groups have referenced salary increases for Jamaican government officials against the background of our gross domestic product, or GDP, suggesting that they are being grossly overpaid. So she's explaining that some people, like journalists, have compared our parliamentarians' salaries relative to Jamaicans' GDP and the salaries of parliamentarians or government officials in other countries relative to their GDP, and that we might not look so good in that way. She continues, when comparing the salaries of individuals, they have little to do with a country's GDP or the size of a company someone is employed to. Instead, wages are directly related to the overall marketplace and the relative importance of the job function within a particular organization. I hope you get what she's saying here. She's saying that when you're talking about salaries for individuals, there's little comparison or little relationship between a person's salary and the GDP of the country, or even with the size of the company to which the person is employed. I beg to differ. Most companies have a salary structure to a great degree that reflects the economy in which they're operating, which of course is normally indicative of or indicated by GDP. And their salaries are also affected by the size of the company. That's why you call some businesses small businesses and some medium and some large. So right there, she has committed a major fallacy by suggesting that you can't compare the two or they're not linked. They are very linked. For example, salaries in Jamaica are very different generally from salaries for the same position in a country like, say, the US or Singapore or Canada or Germany. So she doesn't have a point there, but she sounds quite intelligent in saying it. She also says that you need to look at the marketplace. Now, how do you assess the marketplace for politicians? You cannot compare the international market space for Jamaican politicians because countries don't exchange politicians. You don't apply for a job in another country to say, I'm applying for a position as a politician, or my resume shows that I've been a strong politician in Jamaica, and therefore I'm coming to Canada to be a politician there. There's just no relationship there for that. So there again, she's offside. But again, she sounds very intelligent, but quite offside and quite illogical in her reasoning. We continue. She says, on October 24, 2021, in this column, I wrote an article on performance-based salaries for MPs entitled, "You Get What You Pay For," citing the need to increase the salary of MPs for them to pursue their jobs or their job functions, and that they were earning less than minimum wage in the United States. Now, here's an interesting situation. She has touched on some very important phrases. One of the phrases that she has touched on in this particular paragraph is performance-based salaries. And she's also used the phrase, "You get what you pay for." And then she cited the fact that the salaries of MPs is such that they were earning less than minimum wage in the United States. The UIC stands firmly on the idea of performance-based pay, very, very firmly on that. But she has not really enunciated what that really means. She has just touched on it, which makes her argument sounds very thoughtful and like she's giving a holistic position. But it's not really substantiated by anything. So it's just mentioned here. But the statement, "You get what you pay for," is a very, very important statement. In my future comment, I'm going to explain to you how do you apply the statement, "You get what you pay for," in politics versus how you apply that statement in the general economy, in a market-based economy or a monopolistic economy. So I'm going to speak to that later on. Wait for it. She goes on, "For full disclosure, I have been an MP since 2007. After government taxes and the PNP subtracting its mandatory 10% from my gross pay, my net monthly salary is $257,110.40. So Ms. Hannah is making it clear that she's getting a paltry sum of only $257,000 per month after two things: the government taking its taxes and her party getting a mandatory 10%. No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that every MP gives the party 10% of their salary. I didn't know that at all. So that's something new for you to log into your knowledge of the political process in Jamaica. 1 second here. Whoops. I think I'm losing some. Okay, here we go. Yes. So 1 second again. Let me see if I can make this any better. It's a little better. I hope so. A little too bright. Yeah. So so she's getting $257,000 since 2007 because the PNP takes 10% and the government takes some taxes out of it. So that's small in her estimation. And again, you have to assess, the question is, what is it that an MP does? What is the role of an MP? What is the work of an MP? Well, we don't have job descriptions, so we wouldn't know. So Ms. Lisa Hanna, who has been a member of parliament since 2007, which means she would have served in government under Portia Simpson Miller, she did not ensure that her party instituted job descriptions for members of parliament so that we could know exactly what we're paying them to do. I'm sure she can tell you some things that they do, like they go to funerals in the community, they go to various functions in the community, they engage in a number of social activities in their communities and so on. But what is the real purpose and function of a member of parliament? I submit to you that our parliamentarians do very little by way of functioning as a member of parliament. For one, they do not represent their constituents. They represent their political parties. You will never see an MP in parliament fighting for the issues that are most important to their constituents. They fight for the issue that is most important to their political party. So they're not really representing us, even though they do get votes from the citizens at the local level. And even that is suspect, because in the last election, the government only got 21%. and the opposition got 16%. So they don't really represent the majority of Jamaicans. So anyway, we're going to come back to that. Continuing on in her document, she now touches on something very dear to my heart. She's going to call the name of Singapore. She's going to talk about Singapore. You know that I love Singapore, and I love what Lee Kuan Yew has done. Here's what she has to say now about Singapore. She says, Singapore is the envy of every developing nation, having moved its per capita income in 1960. Listen to this. Singapore is the envy of every developing nation, and I agree with that 100%. Having moved its per capita income, which is GDP divided by the number of citizens, having moved its per capita GDP income in 1960 from US $400. So that means if you take the income of the entire country and divide it by the number of people in the population, it comes out to $400 per person. They moved that, she says, from $400 per person per annum to $72,000 per annum per person today, ranking them 8th in the world above the United States of America. It is the country often referenced as the model of governance to follow, she says. Remember, in 1960, well, I picked my numbers up, and my numbers are related to 1965. So in 1965, from my research, the GDP per capita for Singapore was $550 per person. That was exactly the same number for Jamaica in 1965. Both countries were at $550 per person in GDP per capita in 1965. Fast forward to today, our number in terms of GDP per capita is between $5,000 and $9,000 per person, while Singapore has moved from the 550 to over 65,000 per annum per person. A very significant difference. Now you're going to hear, let me continue, because she's trying to make a point here. Let her make the point, and then I'll rebut it afterwards. It says here, Lee Kuan Yew, the recognized founder of New Singapore, attributes his country's success to decisive leadership with intense implementation of policies to drive education, meritocracy, integrity, and export earnings. You hear that? So Lee Kuan Yew designed a Singapore built on decisive leadership with intense implementation of policies that drove up the quality of their education, that build a nation around merit. So you rise in that country based on merit, not based on nepotism or connection. They built a country with a foundation on integrity. And as a result of this, they were able to push up significantly their ability to export from a country which has less than 1% of our resources. They were able to build a massive exporting nation. She continues, Singapore has no natural resources. Listen, Singapore has no natural resources and a population of only 6 million, which is twice Jamaica. Yet it exports US $733.37 billion per annum US. Singapore exports $733.77 billion US every year. With a population of half the size of Singapore, but 15 times as much land and 99% more resources. The best Jamaica has been able to do in terms of export, says Miss Anna, is $5.99 billion in 2019, less than 1% of what Singapore has done. Imagine that. We have 15 times more land, 100 times more resources, half the population size, a longer period of the same two parties running our country, and we are not able to do even 1% of their export level. Think about it. She continues, this should highlight my often repeated statement that Jamaica cannot prosper by selling to only 3 million people. We must have value-added exports, starting with agriculture. But I still see people with short-sighted vision, she says, continuing to focus on agriculture inward rather than towards export. So here she makes some nice statements. But she's saying those statements as if her political party had not been in office for 18 years straight, which means that they would have been in a position to do all of what Lee Kuan Yew did, all of it, because they had 18 and a half consecutive years to do it. But if you look beyond that, they had more than just 18 years, because the PNP was the first of the two colonial political parties formed in Jamaica in 1938 or thereabouts. So they have been around for more than 80 years now. They have been in government or opposition for more than 80 years now or thereabouts. So if anybody could have done what Lee Kuan Yew has done, the PNP was in a position to do it. And Lisa Anna was at least a part of that process, first working in the background, and then secondarily working as a member of parliament, and thirdly, serving as a minister of government. But she and her party were not able to do anything similar to what Lee Kuan Yew has done in Singapore. Of course, I'm sure she will lay some blame on the other side as well, which we all should, because the JLP, for example, they were the first party to ever be elected since we have open election of one man, one vote in Jamaica. The JLP won the first election in 1944. And when we got the so-called independence, the JLP was the first party to form the government at independence. So they have had ample opportunities as well. And if you think about it, the JLP is the only party that has ever had 100% of all the seats in parliament for a full term. Or, well, they could have had a full term, but I think they call elections a bit early. In any event, the fact is, the JLP has been in a phenomenal position to create the kinds of outcomes that Lee Kuan Yew did, and they squandered it. They had the first chance in 1944. They got 2 terms. They had the first chance again at independence. They had 2 terms. And in both cases, 2 20-year terms, 5-5, 5-5. They failed to so impress the Jamaican people, to so inspire the Jamaican people, to so build confidence in the Jamaican people that they would have been given even more time to do great work, but they failed. And the PNP got 18 and a half straight years, and they still failed. So let's be clear on that. She goes on. Singapore, now she is listening to what she's saying. Now, this is important. She's now guiding us to her argument, by the way, is this. Because Singapore pays their politicians well, Singapore got great results. Fallacy, complete fallacy, which I will dismiss shortly. Wait for it. I'm going to bring home this point later. She says Singapore pays its prime minister $230 million annually, more than 5 times the President of the United States. Of course, Singapore is 8 times richer in GDP per capita than the United States. So she's justifying what the PNP and the JLP tried to do. She says Singapore pays their prime minister a whopping $230 million a year, more than 5 times the president of the US, with less than 2% of their population. So she's trying to show us that population cannot be a basis for setting a price. So Singapore only has 6 million, the US have over 350 million. So you can't use population as a justification to say your wages should follow your population size. And definitely not, but there are other factors. The Singaporean Prime Minister firmly believes that competitive ministerial pay in Singapore is a critical factor for eradicating corruption in the country. So her point is that having higher salaries for politicians will mitigate and limit corruption. There is some argument there, but again, it has to be contextualized. And I'm going to show you that argument that she's making is very fallacious because, let me not say it, wait for it. I want to explain to you later on after we've gone through what she's saying here. So she says the Singaporean Prime Minister believes that competitive ministerial pay in Singapore is a critical factor in eradicating corruption in the country. And by the way, Singapore eradicated corruption upon entering the political fray. So when Lee Kuan Yew and his ministers took over Singapore in the late 1950s, early 1960s, they made a commitment without the big pay to eradicate corruption, and they systemically made sure that they eradicated corruption at the front end. So our parliamentarians could have also eradicated corruption at the front end. What they're saying to us now is, pay us more now so we can eradicate corruption. You have given us 80 years so far, and we have used those 80 years to build a very corrupt country. But if you give us some more money now, you can trust us, depend on us, that we're going to now go and eradicate corruption. That is the logic that she's presenting here. A very poor logic, and one which suggests that she has some kind of serious analytical challenges. We continue. In Singapore, she writes, a minister of government earns $109 million annually. For them, the benchmark salary for an entry-level minister is based on the median income of the top 1,000 Singaporean earners, with a 40% discount to reflect the ethos of political service, according to the Public Service Division website. So break this down. In Singapore, they're getting 109 million, which is really cool, for the entry level. And it is based on taking the top 1,000 Singaporean earners in the country and then discounting it by 40%. So if they were getting $100, you take off $40 and bring it to 60 in order for you to get to the number that is here described. Closer to home, she says, in 2009, the salary for the Barbadian Prime Minister was $16 million per annum. The population of Barbados is only 280,000, less than the size of Portmore. So she's showing how a small population size of Barbados was not enough to cause the Prime Minister's salary to be, low compared to, in terms of Jamaica, that's relatively high, right? The Prime Minister here is getting less than that. And so she's making a case that if we look at Barbados, we're even behind Barbados, little Barbados. Yep. By the way, Barbados also follows the same corrupt system that we do. So not a good example there. So what is the salary of the top 1,000 earners in Jamaica, she then asks. Well, let us begin with lawyers, she says. several of whom charge $60,000 per hour, US 400. Within a 40-hour work week, they can earn up to $2.4 million per week or $124 million annually. Specialist doctors earn within the same bracket or more. So lawyers who, as you know, if you're a lawyer, you would have studied very hard in school to earn your law degree. And if you're going to make $60,000 an hour, you have to work very hard to build your client base and to deliver in a way that makes your clients want to keep you. And if you're a bad lawyer, people just simply don't pay you. So she's comparing herself to somebody like that, right? Where we don't hire politicians the way we hire lawyers. I wish we did. We don't hire politicians the way we hire doctors. But that's the comparison she's making. According to their published annual reports, leaders within the corporate Jamaica earn between 25 million to 100 million annually. So she's now comparing them to a small group of people, many of whom I would put together with the PSOJ oligarchs, who are making 25 million and 100 million, while most Jamaicans are subsisting on relatively very low wages. 25 million to 100 million is similar to first world countries in terms of pay level, while most Jamaicans do not get comparable pay that is similar to what somebody in the US doing the same job would get, or in Canada, or in Britain, or in Cayman for that matter. So again, she makes a flawed comparison by trying to say, let's use Singapore's model of looking at the top 1,000 earners. And if we were to look at that, then where should our politicians fall? But let's remember, Singapore, their top 1,000 earners are doing very well, not because their people have been cheated by a master slave economic system, but because their government have created an environment that attracts more than 200 companies to Singapore to set up office because of the stable government, the reliable government, the safe environment, the high quality, well-trained human capital that Singapore has. So because Singapore has built an environment that is very, very good for business, they command some of the highest salaries among their top earners, their top 1,000 earners. In Jamaica, many of our top 100 earners are not getting it because they're running very solid business models. They're getting it because they're ripping off the vast majority of the people because of the environment that our government has created. Yeah. So anyways, we continue. She says, the salaries of the heads of government, executive agencies, for example, National Housing Trust, the Port Authority, the Heart and NSTA Trust, earns $31 million, $30.9 million, and $17.6 million, respectively. All these heads of government, all these heads of agencies report to the Prime Minister, whose salary is $9 million. And that looks horrible. That does not make sense. It doesn't make sense to have your Prime Minister making $9 million while your heads of agencies are making $31 million and $30 and $17 million. Why are they making so much? What's the cause? Why are they making so much more than the Prime Minister? Who sets those salaries? Isn't it the government who set those salaries? Of course, they're government agencies. So the government makes those arrangements and then tell us that they need to raise their salaries to be comparable and better than those. But what are the results? How efficient is it to live in Jamaica? How pleasant is it to live in Jamaica? How orderly is our environment? How productive are we as a people? Every day I move around this country, I see people struggling just to get by, not just from a salary standpoint, but just to get through the inefficiencies and ineffectiveness and how painful. I'll give you an example. We are currently trying to settle the venue for June 10th. You know, we have a venue, the Mandela Park. So we go to Mandela Park, we say to them, we want to use the space to have our rally on the 10th of June. This was like, I think 3 weeks ago. We asked them, first of all, what is the price? We didn't tell them who we were initially. So they tell us if we're a church, we get it for $25,000. So we ask why? Why is it for a church it's $25,000? And when we tell you our name, you're quoting us $71,000. Why are you charging us $71,000, but you're going to give the church $25,000? Why does the church get the entire place for the whole day for $25,000? And we, because we're a political organization, we must pay $71,000 and get it for a portion of the day. After much iteration, they say, okay, we'll give you a discount, bring it down to $52,000 or something like that. Yeah, $52,000. I was saying, yeah, but why should we are a non-profit organization. We are a public benefit organization. We're not having a function for profit. This is a function for the interest of the Jamaican people. Why should we pay $52,000 and the church should pay $25,000? Why? Fortunately, a number of organizations are working with the UIC to make this happen. And so one of the churches stepped forward on our prompting and said, okay, well, we will get the venue. We will apply for the venue. And so they gave the church the venue for our purpose as a team, because we're working with a number of organizations to put this on, to say $25,000. But it took us so many steps. And then after that, you know, we have to go to the police to get a permit. The police says, okay, you have to first get a receipt from KSAC. So we have to go to KSAC. We must pay KSAC $20,000 for what? Plus another, I think it was $15,000 and $6,000 for something. We have to pay them. So you have all these steps to make. And by the way, you never get all of this information up front. You have to go around and around and around and around, and time is going before you can get all the need here. Oh, you needed to have done this 11 days before, or 10 days before, or 50 days. You know, it's so convoluted in this country. Very, very convoluted. So all manner of corruption, and this system, the country we have, this system was designed by these two parties. So when you hear them complaining about whatever, it's them set it up. They're the ones who set up this country the way it is. We never did it. They have organized all of what is going on. Yeah. So they're the ones that create a miserable country for us. And then they want to turn around now and blame us when we are unhappy with them, and when we're unhappy with them trying to give themselves a big raise on our backs. But let's continue. She says here, a deeper analysis of the pay scale of the public service reveals the following. 1. The payment of salaries to the public sector workers increased from $224 billion to $318 billion, which is an increase of 42%. 2. The impact of the salary increase represents 5% of the total tax collections, moving from 37% to 42%. 3. The entire government staff of approximately 100,000 people were the beneficiaries of these allocations, which is at 5%, have not put undue strain on the Jamaican budget. Okay, let's back up a bit and unpack her reasoning here. So number 1, the increase to public sector workers overall is 42%. That's the first argument. Yeah. Number two, the impact of the salary increases represents 5% of the total tax collection. The increase represents about 5%. The entire government, she's saying, who are the beneficiaries of the allocations, will not put an undue strain on the budget because it's only 5%. So she's telling us that we really shouldn't be concerned. We should have no concern at all about the fact that they're raising their salaries 100, 200, and 300% because it's only a 5% impact. The actual increase, based on her calculation, is just a 5% impact on the budget. It's not a big strain on the budget. I guess it's not a big strain on the budget for the Jamaican people when so many of us are going home to communities with bad roads. I guess it's not a big strain on the budget when so many of our students in school don't have the resources they need. I guess it's not a strain on the budget when many of our police officers have to be doing 2 or 3 side hustles to make up their income. And the same for teachers and even for nurses. I guess it's not a strain on the budget when many of our young people are leaving school without the kind of skills necessary to be productive citizens. And as a result, the 70% who are failing are adding significantly to the crime statistics of our country by expanding those who are available for criminal activities. So her little 5%, as far as she sees it, doesn't have a major impact at all on Jamaica. Well, I think it does. There's a very serious impact because there are many families tonight who are not able to buy a full basket of grocery, and where they're having to choose between bus fare to go to work and lunch money for the kids and dinner tonight. So I see a serious problem there. But let's go on. She says it is worth noting that the Prime Minister's salary increase represents 0.0061% of the total salary budget, while the Cabinet Minister's increase represents 0.0804%, and permanent secretaries represents 0.0482%, and MPs 0.1518%. Now, I'm sure Lisa knows that most Jamaicans are not good at math. So when you list all of these 0.048 and 0.0804 and 0.1518, you have kind of lost most of the Jamaican people because math is not the forte for many. But fortunate for me, I'm an accountant, a CPA, and math is one of my favorite subjects, as well as economics. And these percentages that you're sharing means nothing at all to any of us, because we're not concerned about the percent of the total salary budget that the MPs are getting, or the cabinet ministers are getting, or the permanent secretaries are getting. We're concerned about getting value for money, Lisa. Value for money. What is the value that we're getting for the money that we're spending? And so far, the Jamaican people, based on our response, we're saying that the value of what you're giving us does not connect with the value of additional salaries that you're requesting. There's a disconnect between the value, because we're looking at our lives, Lisa. We're looking at our country. We're looking at our experiences. And we're saying to ourselves, we are not seeing the connection between what you're asking for. Not asking. What you have taken, what you have given yourselves. We're not seeing the connection between that and the value that we're receiving as Jamaicans. So I hope you can understand that. She continues, the overall salary increase of the management personnel of the country represents 0.29% of the total salary budget. Can this be considered excessive? So percentage-wise, Lisa, 0.29 by itself is not excessive. The question is, are they really managing anything? Most of the laws that we have in Jamaica are not laws that are crafted by careful analysis and thinking by our politicians. There are laws that are given to us, given to them by their colonial masters. Most of the development in Jamaica is done by borrowing excessively, wasting a big chunk of that money, misallocating some, and then producing an outcome which does not add much value to our productivity as a nation. So what are they managing? How have they managed the exchange rate for Jamaica? Let's look at that. So if they're managing, what's happening with our exchange rate? How are they managing inflation in Jamaica? What has happened to the value of the Jamaican purchasing power over the years? If they're managing education, what has been the outcome of managing that education? What do we look like? What does our country look like? How educated are our people? How productive are our people? How effective are our citizens? What are they managing? If you're talking about managing our infrastructure, look at it, it's decaying. Yes, we have some toll roads, but they're toll roads, they're not regular roads. Public transportation, how are they managing? Lisa, what is the management what management are we paying for? In a company, when you have a management team and the company isn't profitable, they get fired. You can't compare that to our politics because our politics doesn't work that way. When we fire the JLP, we simply hire the PNP. And when we fire the PNP, we simply hire the JLP. And when we fire the JLP, we just hire back the PNP. So this is not a real open market. So we're actually not, you can't compare yourself with management of anything because your two parties have not managed Jamaica very well on any level. You have not managed our transportation. You have not managed our airline. You have not managed our economy. You have not managed our education. You have not managed our healthcare. What have you been managing? If you want us to pay you like you are a manager, what is it that you're managing? As soon as the foreign masters come with something, you just lap it up. If they say to inject your entire population, you just run them down and start to try to inject them. If they say put in a new system of money on them, you just grab it up and say, where put it in. If they say put in a new identification system and force it on them and get their biometrics, you just start to do that. So what are you managing? You can't call a puppet a manager. You might call him a middleman, but he's not a manager. The PNP and GLP, they have not managed anything except to create corruption and criminality. If that was the metrics, if you're asking for pay based on your performance in creating corruption and in creating criminals, then your pay should be through the roof because you have been very, very successful at that. But I don't think most Jamaicans wanted that as the outcome. So if you're going to measure it now based on what your management results are, a devaluing dollar, a lack of purchasing power, a reduction in production, a reduction in business, a reduction in Jamaicans owning anything, a reduction in our quality of life, the sanity of the nation. If those are your metrics, then not even $1 you deserve, not even 1 cent, to be honest. But let me continue. She says here, every organization has a pay scale. Government is no different and has a pay scale for each worker category similar to positions in the private sector. Based on the current pay scales, MPs would now be paid similar to a high school principal, bearing in mind that a principal has the security of tenure, holidays, and designated school working hours, while an MP does not. An MP has to reapply for their job every 5 years. So she's crying now. She's saying, look at it, it's so unfair. An MP is going to be paid similar to a school principal when a school principal has it so much better than an MP. A school principal has security of tenure, they have holiday pay, they have designated school hours, but MP don't have that. What does MP have? MP has no job description. They can not show up to Parliament if they don't want to. They have many side hustles. They are in a privileged position and can thief taxpayers' money. I think, there are many principals. There are people who left being a principal to become a politician. If it was so beautiful for principals, why are so many of them happy if they're given the call to come and take up a Senate position and then to be appointed into cabinet? I see doctors and lawyers leaving their professions to become politicians. So maybe, Lisa, you're missing some of the perks. Maybe you're not telling us the full story. What are the perks of being a politician? There's no way that the Prime Minister could be so wealthy on the measly salary that he has been getting for so many years. In case you don't know, the Prime Minister left university roughly about the same time that I did. And the Prime Minister has been in politics almost immediately after leaving University of the West Indies. I think he worked for a year in a kind of charity that might have been even politically associated. And in the following year, he was working as Mr. Siaga's assistant, because Mr. Siaga tutored him. Mr. Siaga trained him, right? Mr. Siaga was his mentor, as well as Golden. So he was well trained to be the politician you see him being today. And so for all of his work life, he has been in politics. Yeah, all of his work life, he has been in politics. I mean, actively involved in politics. He has been a member of parliament as a young man, and he has grown up through that system. So he is very, very experienced at politics. Clearly not at managing a country, but at politics. But yet still, unlike all the other young men who graduated from university with him the same time, who are making bigger salaries than him, some of them, right? Based on what Lisa is saying here. Him richer than all of them. How did he do that? Oh, you're going to tell me about his wife. His wife did it. So maybe it's his wife that did all of it. But then she gave up, or maybe she didn't, but she also jumped into politics. She never said, okay, honey, you go on with the politics thing, which don't pay much, don't offer much, and I will continue to do our lucrative business, which gives us a whole heap of wealth. Because obviously something gave them a whole lot of wealth. It couldn't be politics, because politics doesn't pay very well. They're telling us it hasn't paid them very well for 37 years. Yeah. So it couldn't be politics. So where did the wealth come from? And then we can't get to see the details of where the wealth come from. We get some lame reports. We can't tell the details of it. Yeah. So the bottom line is, Lisa, your argument again here fails too. Because clearly you're in a much better position than the principal. And this is politics, Lisa. You can't expect to be in politics for life unless you're a dictator. You can't have tenure. It's a very different nature. It's a different kind of job, Lisa. So you can't expect that you should have security of tenure and the same kind of structure as a school principal. And the truth is, I can bet you, if you take a school principal and look at their impact on the lives of our Jamaican people for 5 years, that impact might be far better than the impact of a politician for 5 years. The politician spent those 5 years, for the most part, seeking to figure out how to trick the people into electing them for another 5 years. You go to most communities around Jamaica. Come to my community. I'm here in Bogue, Northeast St. Elizabeth. where if you come and look at this community, show me what the politicians have done for the last 5 years. Show me what they've done for the last 10 years. Show me what they've done for the last 20 years. And so on. Sorry, there's somebody out my window here. You show me what they have done for the last 10, 20, 30 years in my community. I would love to know what is it that they have done for the last 20, 30 years that we should be paying them for. I can assure you that the principal at Braze River Primary did something more valuable for the last 5 years as a principal than the politician for this constituency. I can assure you of that. So Miss Lisa, don't bother to compare yourself with the principals here. That's not a good idea. She continues, as I said in October 2021, if we genuinely seek to move our country forward to one Jamaica instead of two, we must demand more from elected officials and top civil servants. Therefore, we must attract the best talent by requiring minimum entry requirements commensurate with market conditions and job expectations. Lovely statement, Miss Hannah. Let's look at it now. She says, if we genuinely seek to move our country forward to one Jamaica. Now, this is what the UIC talks about, right? We want to create one Jamaica, united, strong, and free. And so she's referring to that. If we want to create one Jamaica instead of two, we must demand. Now, who's we? Let's not forget, it's the PNP and the JLP who create the Jamaica we have today. So who is we to demand from our elected officials and top civil servants the more? They were the ones that created the Jamaica we have today. They were the ones who created the two Jamaica. I know we created. It's the PNP and JLP working with the PSOJ oligarchs. Back then they were called the plantocracy. It's them create the two Jamaica. I know we created. It's them create the two Jamaica because our people couldn't read, write, or reason very much after some 400 years of slavery, another 100 years of colonial rule. So they were the ones who had the opportunity, these two parties, they had the opportunity to create the Jamaica that we see today. And they chose this Jamaica. They chose to create this Jamaica and now saying we must demand. What are we going to demand? All we can demand is that they get lost. And I'm hoping we do demand that at the polls in the next election. On a serious note, she's saying, if we genuinely seek to move, so it means they weren't genuine. All those pretty speeches that she had given over the years, they weren't genuine. All the nice words about why you went into politics, it wasn't genuine. You said, Lisa, you said it, that you have been intrigued by politics all your life. You talk about how you were mentored by PJ Patterson, how you were mentored by Portia Simpson, and how you get up every morning looking forward to do this. Are you telling me, Lisa, that you were not genuine all this time? And for you to be genuine, we now need to increase your salary and that of all politicians in order for you to now be genuine. Something is wrong with that argument, Lisa. Something is very wrong with that argument. Very wrong. She said, we must attract the best talent. So that means we don't have the best talent right now. We must attract the best talent by requiring minimum entry requirements, commensurate with market conditions. So what you're really saying here now, give us a bigger pay, and we will then be attracting better talent. How are we going to do that, Lisa? You and your party, your two colonial parties, working in concert with the PSOJ oligarchs who fund your parties, you have a lock on who can run for office. Anybody who wants to run, even the most well-paid, no, let me not put, let's say there's a bright person today in Jamaica who wants to run. Take Andre Orton, that lovely little young economist. If he wants to run and serve his country, in his mind, there's no way to do it but to join one of your two parties so that he will receive the blessing of the backing that comes from the PSOJ oligarchs. So that means that no matter how much we pay UNO, your system will still have control over the political process and decide who can get in and who can be more likely to be elected. So don't come and try to fool us with this argument that if we give UNO more money, we're going to attract brighter people. We won't be attracting nobody. You will simply now have the means on top of the one you have already stolen, all of UNO. You'll now have the means, by virtue of legalizing the theft, you'll now have the means to fully lock out anybody else out of this process. So you are trying to organize yourselves better. You're trying to solidify your hold on the Jamaican people by saying, make it easier now for us to get more money out of you. By jacking up our pay 200, 300%, so it's locked in legally, and we already know that the system done set already for us to control it. We just want now to have this legitimate increase in the amount of money we can get legally, so we don't have to always depend on just finding new and skillful ways to steal from the public purse. So by this comment, Lisa is actually opening up to us and showing us that they're not genuine and that they have always been working against us. And the only way they'll work for us is if we legalize the massive theft of our tax dollars by giving them more to do what they've done to us. No way. She continues, it is time we accept the age-old adage. It is time we accept the age-old adage, she says. You get what you pay for. Or else, the annual constituency debate will continue to applaud road construction, care package distribution, and constituency development fund benefits without actual development of our country and increasing the per capita income of our people. And with that, she ends with a lovely, beautiful picture of herself. Listen, me people. Listen to what Lisa just said here. You get what you pay for, and you have not been paying for them to do a good job, so they have been fooling us up with little pia road construction, little care packages of food and stuff, little handouts, and with the playing around of the Constituency Development Fund, which is nothing more than a corruption scheme to give out little benefits to partisan associates. And she, in her words, without actual development. Without actual development. So she's saying, as long as we do not give them this massive increase, you will never see actual development and a rise in our per capita income to anything close to what Singapore has. That's what Lisa is telling us. And for that, we should applaud her, because she has made clear what we have always known. We may not fully understand it. I do. I fully understand it. But many Jamaicans may not fully understand it. And so what Lisa is doing now, she is making it crystal clear. But you have to read between the lines properly. She's making a case for why we need to give them the 200% and 300% increase. But in making that case, she has inadvertently made it clear for us why we should not give them this increase. She has made it clear to us what they have been doing, that they have not been genuine, they have not been working for us, they have been fooling us up. So how were they benefiting? If this is so bad for them, why has she stuck with it? Why have they stuck with it? Why have they become what you call them now? Geriatrics. Why have they stayed in there until them old? Many of them. Now you have Lisa and Damian Crawford and you know others who are coming to do the same thing. Why have they stuck with it in this miserable system, this bad arrangement, this low pay job? Why have they stuck with it? To give us care packages and poor road construction and constituency development fund handouts. Why have they stuck with it for all these years? If it's so bad, come to tell us now that it's so bad that if we want better, we need to do better and pay them. But had them set up the system, and they have set that system up, and they've been running that system for 8 years, and it's now they're telling us that we need to pay them more for us to get actual development. We have to pay them more now if we want them to finally start to do the job which they said they were doing before. So all those debates that you saw Lisa in, where she's saying what a great job that the PNP has done and what they have done and all of that is a lie. She knows it's a lie because she's saying they were never doing any real development. Never. Because they were not being paid to do real development. So they were just warming the benches. They were doing something else other than real development. Well, I'm done with her now. I want to turn my attention to what I promised you in the beginning. I want to dissect this from another angle now. I want you to see a different perspective on this. I want you to understand the root cause of this. And so now I'm going to shift the focus of my presentation from Lisa's article, which we see is complete hogwash, a bunch of intellectual foolishness, an attempt at disguising the reality that they have not been serving our interest, but have been pretending to do so, and that they will never do so unless we authorize them to make legal some of the theft that they have engaged in. So I'm going to shift my position now to really give you the full behind the scene understanding of this. Before I do so, please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. We need to get this channel, UIC Liberty TV, to way over 60,000 subscribers so that more Jamaicans can hear what we're saying. Because remember, the media isn't carrying us. They don't want us to hear. They don't want Jamaicans to hear what I'm saying. They don't want Jamaicans to hear what the UIC has to say. So you're not hearing us, even though this is a big hot debate. Not once have you seen on radio or television where they have announced the UIC's position on these salary increases. Not once. No big issue in Jamaica do they ever show the UIC's position. And they're watching. They're on my program here watching and taking notes. The PNP is watching, the GLP is watching, the PSOJ is watching, and all the major media houses are watching. And then they take whatever they can and they try to repackage it. So you'll hear Damian Crawford going around now talking about land reparation because they hear it from me and they try to repackage it now and sell it back to the Jamaicans as if they mean these things and want these things to happen. So you have to help us by liking. The more you like, the more you comment, the more you subscribe, the more people you get to subscribe, the more you share, is the more you're helping us to reach more Jamaicans. Just like on June 10th, when you come out to that rally that we're going to have, that big rally at Mandela Park, when you come out and you bring your family and your friends and your neighbors and your enemies, you're helping to drum up support so more people can hear about the UIC and see what we're doing and understand the message and join in to rescue our country. So now let me get to my summary, if you will. When politicians speak, you must not just take them at their word. Very important. Don't just take politicians at their word. You must put what they say in the context of their history, as well as the history of your country. Otherwise, you'll be easily swayed by their charisma or twisted logics and end up giving them the unintended permission to screw you over and over again. That is what Lisa has attempted to do here. Now, Andrew, Mark, Nigel, and now Lisa have been playing with our hearts and our minds on the matter of their cunning attempt to legalize the theft of our tax dollars. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to legalize theft because they know they're not worthy of these funds. They know they haven't earned it, but they're trying to make sure it is written in law, it is etched in stone, so that going forward, they have this liquid funds coming to them, even though they're not performing. And they play with us. They play with our hearts. They play with our minds. And so they try this and they try that. So they have the prime minister say one thing, the finance minister say another thing, the shadow minister of finance say one thing, the opposition leader say another thing. Then Lisa comes says, and they try to play with us and trying to whittle us down and get us into a position where we just give up. And it's a 9-day wonder. And they tell you who's going to give 80% of their salary away and who is going to roll back his but leave the others, and so on. It's all a game, my friends. Clearly, they all, every single one of them, believe that they actually deserve a whopping 100, 200, or even 300% increase in their salary for the tremendous work that they have done since they have decapitated Marcus Garvey and destroyed his truly grassroots party, because that's what they did. So they believe that we should reward them for what they've done over the last 80 years, chief of which, believe it or not, was to make sure that they decapitated Marcus Garvey and destroyed his grassroots party. There's no doubt that all of them feel such a massive raise of pay for themselves is very justified, given their excellent stewardship of our nation, since being given the role as the establishment parties by their colonial masters some 80 years ago. You didn't know that, did you? They were given the role as the establishment parties by their colonial masters, not by our people. Our people did not select the PNP and GLP. Our people were conned into believing that they selected the PNP and GLP 80 years ago. The greatest achievement of those two parties was the displacement of Marcus Garvey and the destruction of his party and the obliteration of his message. So these politicians, including the younger ones, when they look at the time, energy, and intellect that they have put into making Jamaica what it is today, they felt entitled to a much bigger salary than the people they were placed over by their colonial masters. Does that sound strange to you? Because that's what it is. They were placed over us to be like a bakra master, to be like the house slaves. And how dare we not expect them to be paid much more than we, given their lauded position granted to them by their colonial masters. What I'm saying might sound strange to you, but listen carefully. It is all a matter of perspective. These politicians, they see things from one perspective, and the rest of us see the same thing from another perspective. They believe they have earned a higher salary, but we, the people, know that they have not earned it. And so there's a big rift between us because they think they've earned it. They're unable to see the mess that they have created. They have blinded themselves to the reality of the Jamaican people compared to the esteem with which they hold themselves as Her Royal Majesty government, or His Royal Majesty government and His Royal Majesty's opposition. They see us as commoners and they're above us. But what is it that is causing this political class to be so disconnected from the reality of the working class? I'll tell you what it is, but you must be patient with me if you want to fully understand. Be patient and follow closely. You're going to have to think outside of the box now if you want to understand why is it that this political class see things so differently from the working class that they have power over, and they do have power over us. Here's how I'm going to explain to you how the power is. Here goes. So Lisa Anna and Andrew Onis are actually correct that we get what we pay for. They're actually very, very correct. We do get what we pay for. But the statement only applies in a truly free market economy where the customer has real choice and the customer has the means to make or create those choices. So you get what you pay for in a free market economy, a truly free market economy where you really have choice and you have the means to make those choices. If the market, however, is a monopoly or there is no real competition in the market, then the customer can only buy what the monopoly offers, or the customer can choose to go without. But in a sense, you have no choice in a monopoly. In other words, the monopoly first robs the customer of any choices and then forces the customer to live with the choice made for them or to leave it. So it's a take it or leave it situation. Unfortunately, in our politics, leaving it means living with it. In other words, not voting for one or the other still leaves you to suffer the bad governance of one or the other. Let's bring this fully to our politics. The Jamaican people have been robbed of any good choices when it comes on to our politics and our government. In 1944, when we had our first ever open one-man, one-vote election, the JLP and PNP were bought and paid for by those who controlled our economy and money. We call this group the plantocracy. They owned the plantation. They owned the commerce and trade. And the vast majority of people were just subsistent persons or persons looking for a job from these moneyed class who controlled the wealth built up and organized by the colonial masters. Okay? So at the time when we were given the right to vote in 1944, the two parties presented to us, there are other parties as well, fringes, but the two major ones presented to us was bought and paid for by the plantocracy, by what we call today the PSOJ oligarchs. So they bought those parties, they own those parties. The PSOJ oligarch and the media that it owned and which it controls, they colluded with the colonial masters that were still here in their full force. They colluded with them to run Marcus Garvey and his grassroots party out of town. So they got rid of the real competition. They got rid of the real choice that you would have had. And then they gave you their option of choice. They eliminated the competition and created for you a monopoly and a fake competition. So you saw two thinking you have choice, but it was a fake, it was a controlled monopoly, a controlled opposition. So from 1944 until now, some 80 years, the PSOJ oligarchy has been getting what they paid for with the money that they extracted from the working class, from your grandmother and grandfather, and from your mother and father, and from now us. The money that the PSOJ oligarchy is taking from us, they use to buy the politics that they want, and they are getting what they paid for. You're not getting what you paid for because you don't get to pay for anything really directly. You pay indirectly by them sucking that money out of you, owning that money, and using it to pay for the kind of politics they want. So from 1944 until now, 80 years, the PSOJ oligarchy has been getting what they paid for. I know Lisa said we get what we pay for. What do we pay for? In other words, the PSOJ oligarchy is really a simple, powerful continuation of the old plantocracy class, a continuation of the colonial master's agenda, who desperately wants to maintain a system of slavery at all costs. Slavery takes different forms. It's not just a form where you have chains and whips. They have a better form, which is now called wage slavery. Let me break it down for us. In 1838, when the colonial masters gave us a fake freedom, and in 1944, when they gave us a fake democracy, and in 1962, when they gave us a fake independence, the majority of us couldn't read. We couldn't write, and we couldn't reason effectively. Can't read, can't write, and can't reason. Not because we didn't want to, but remember, they withhold education from us. And when they did give us a form of education, it was mostly a form of brainwashing, so that we don't like even ourselves. We don't like our hair. We don't like our nose. We don't like our mouth. We don't like our skin color. We learn to be subservient. So at every step of the way, they're tricking us. Every way. They're always trying to trick us. So in 1838, they tricked us with fake freedom. In 1944, fake democracy. We can vote, but they control it. In 1962, fake independence. Independent, but not independent. And they know that the majority of us can't read and write or reason. So when they worked through the local elites or the plantocracy, they gave us a fake constitution and two fake parties to pacify us into a modern form of slavery. And we were none the wiser. We ran off with it thinking that we were actually engaged in real political decision making, real deciding between different ideologies, and we were really voting for something. No, it was all a trick, a mirage actually. So the local elites, or plantocracy, which I today call the PSOJ oligarchy, they all colluded with the colonial masters to give us a fake constitution to this very day, and two fake parties to help us implement something against ourselves, pacifying us that they're addressing our various concerns. Yeah? Watch what they did. We didn't even have a clue what they were doing to us. We had no idea what was going on. We, the average men and women. And they were doing it with the help of two imposter parties led by two white-looking cousins, Norman Manley and Alexander Bustamante. And we were enamored by them. We were excited by them. We were impressed with them. Because remember, our brains were already tarnished, because just looking at them, we see that they were like gods. And they hijacked the workers' movement and convinced us that they would take a bullet for us. Remember, Bustamante, shoot me and leave the people? Yes, them trick us really well. So they won our trust. They won our trust. And so they were able to trick us completely. They taught us, watch me now carefully, this is where we wrap it up. They taught us a very, very important lesson, one that I want you to understand tonight. They taught us something so profound that it has chained up our minds, chained our hands, chained our feet. They have taught us a lesson that has messed us up in a profound way, that even after I tell you this, you're going to struggle to believe it. You're going to have a hard time coming to terms with the reality. But they taught us a lesson that you need to understand. They taught us to move away from Marcus Garvey's crowdfunding model, where we, the people, would own and control the political party. And as a result, through the political party, we, the people, owned, not the oligarchs, not the plantocracy, not the elites in our society, but we, the mass of people. They taught us to move away from this fundamental idea that Marcus Garvey used to build the UNIA, that Marcus Garvey tried to build here in Jamaica, that Marcus Garvey succeeded with so phenomenally in the US, to the point where the US government had to come to deal with him and get rid of him because he was liberating and Okay. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me still. We lost connection there earlier. Can you hear me? That's here. Can you hear me? Here. Phew. Okay. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. I'm not seeing anything here. Not seeing any signals. Norman says yes. All right. Wonderful. So I was right in the middle of something, and everything just went blank. But we're back, and okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. So let me see if I can pick up where I left off here. Well, Sonia, I don't forget. I think I remember exactly what I was saying. But I want to pick it up just to let my brain kick in. I don't understand what just happened there, but and I have another meeting. All right, so here we go. We're going to kick this in. So I was about to explain to you, what they want, what they have taught us. The two parties working in concert with the colonial masters, with the PSOJ oligarchs, they have taught us something fundamentally destructive. They have taught us that the way of Marcus Garvey is wrong. What Marcus Garvey did in the 1930s leading up to the 1944 elections, they taught us that we should not follow his model. His model was to create a political movement that was truly by the people, of the people, and for the people. And what do I mean by that? His model was a crowdfunding model where the movement was not owned by the rich elites in society. The movement was owned by the people, particularly the mass of people who were being oppressed by the minority, the elite class, the PSOJ oligarch class, the plantocracy class. So Marcus Garvey was showing us the light that we must never allow our political system to be owned and controlled by a few, but must always have that system resting in the hands of the people, the mass of people. And so what Marcus Garvey created was a crowdfunding model. So his party, his political party, would be owned and funded by the people broad-based. So he didn't have any one man, one woman, or a few men and a few women who would be giving millions and millions of dollars and have control over the party. But rather, you would have thousands and thousands of people giving them little bit. So the little shoemaker, the little dressmaker, the little snow cone cart man, the little farmer, little shopkeeper, everybody are throwing in them little bit to fund the movement so that the big money interests can't take it over. You follow me? And so that is what Marcus Garvey created. And these two parties, working insidiously, they have trained us away from that. They taught us to move away from Marcus Garvey's crowdfunding model, where we would own and control our own political party, own and control our own minds, own and control our own lands, own and control our own industries, own and control our country. They caused us to move away from that paradigm to a different paradigm. Which paradigm? Which paradigm they tricked us into accepting? They fooled us very, very effectively. They fooled us into thinking we can get something for nothing. They fooled us into thinking we can get something for nothing by sending us fake leaders, misleaders, to buy us with free things at election time, to buy us with promises of freeness if we vote for them. They made us believe that all we needed to do was to show up and vote for who was prettiest, who was nicest in giving out free things, who could give us free t-shirts, free armbands. Yeah. My system is trying to crash again. Giving me a warning here. But they're trying, they got us to move away from the idea that we, the people, have to work for what we want. That we have to own the system to give us what we want. They got us to think we can get something for nothing. They got us to learn that we don't need to donate to a politician campaign. We don't need to donate to any political party. We just need to wait around for election time to come. And we don't know how the ads were paid for. We don't know how the flyers were paid for. We don't know how the posters were paid for. We don't know how the armbands, the t-shirts, the caps were paid for. We don't know where the money come from to give us the $5,000 in the t-shirts. We don't know none of that. We just go and vote. Whichever one give us the nicest arrangements, we'll go and vote for them. And over time, we become crystallized into GLP or PNP, green or orange, because the one didn't give me some bag of cement, or the one didn't give me some animal food, or the one didn't give me some rum for the funeral, or the one didn't give me some money for sending my picnic to go to school, or the one didn't buy some school book. And they got us into that kind of thinking. But who was paying for that? Where did the money come from to buy us and to buy our votes? Where did the money come from to advertise the pie-in-the-sky promises of free everything, free education, free healthcare, free this, free that? Where did the money come from to communicate with us so effectively? Where did the money come from to wow us with posters and flyers and grand motorcades and big meeting and big sound system and all that? Where did the money come from? Not from you. You got something for nothing. Your grandparents got something for nothing. Your mother and father got something for nothing. Or that is what they thought. They thought they were getting something for nothing, that they just had to go and vote. And that they send somebody to pick you up at your yard to go and vote. They thought they were getting something for nothing. You know what they were getting? You know what they were getting? They were getting ripped off left, right, and center. Because all of that money that the PSOJ oligarchs give to the parties to buy you and buy your votes, that money was made back by the PSOJ oligarchs from your government, shifting resources from your school, from your hospitals, from your roads, shifting money from the capital that should be available to grow your small business, shifting that money to pay back their benefactors and to enrich themselves so that at the next election they can come again and buy you some sweetie to get your vote one more time. That's what is going on. That is the trick. That is how it works. And that is what they've tricked us into doing. So where did all that money came from? It all came from the PSOJ oligarchy, the plantocracy, who funded our distraction, who funded our division, who funded their deception, and who are funding our destruction. The plantocracy, my friends, they got what they paid for. So Lisa Anna and Andrew and Nigel are right. We get what we pay for. They trick us into not paying for our own party. Many people don't want to contribute to building any political movement, building the UIC, because they think it should be for free. What they don't know is that nothing is free. The PSOJ oligarchy, they are paying for the pain you and I are suffering today. The PSOJ oligarchy, they have been getting what they paid for. They got the government contracts that made the few of them richer while simultaneously making the majority of us poorer. They got the regulations they desired to protect the interests of the big banks and the big men while oppressing the small men and women, turning more and more of us into corrupt individuals or criminals. The PSOJ oligarch, they got what they paid for. They got the school system designed to produce wage slaves for their needs. Instead of informed, independent thinkers and doers that would stand up and understand and overturn their organized scam. The PSOJ oligarchs, they got what they paid for. They got us into the gangs and the ghettos and the squatting to keep us fighting and killing each other instead of having a government that would give us a safe, clean, and orderly society where our communities look, smell, and feel like a tourist resort. No. Them don't want that for we. Only for themselves. Yes. The PSOJ oligarchy gets what they paid for. They get us to be their wage slaves, to work hard and buy back our own property at high prices and sink into a debt trap called mortgage instead of returning to us free of charge the land that was stolen from our ancestors. They got what they want. They get vast swaths of our lands, the best of our beaches, ownership of all of our major industries and businesses, while we live, beg, and borrow on the margins. So it's working. They get what they paid for. And as long as we continue to fall for the lie, to fall for the trick, where we do not pay for the political party that we want and build the political organization that we need, as long as we don't do that, then we will get what we paid for, nothing but what we have now. The kind of politicians we have now. So the answer is not to give them a bigger paycheck. The answer is to give them a pink slip. That is the answer. But you can't give them a pink slip by just saying pink slip, because they have it figured out. They have set up a system where you vote for one or the other. So whichever one you vote for, the system remains, and the PSOJ oligarchy continues to sit atop and stay fat. So if we want to change that system, we have to decide that we're going to pay for the change. We're going to join the UIC. We're going to volunteer in the UIC. We're going to donate to the UIC. We're going to run for office as a candidate in the UIC. We're going to get involved in the UIC, get involved in how it raises funds, how it spends the funds, how it manages its process, how it selects it. Get involved at whatever level is comfortable for you, but get involved. You must. If you don't do that, the PSOJ oligarchs will be very happy, because they know that even if it's only 20% of us that vote, as long as we only have their two parties in front of the people, they will win. They will win. Yeah. So when you hear them talking about Lee Kuan Yew, don't be fooled. They're going to use it up now because they want to make sure when you hear it from me, it sounds, you stop paying attention. So you'll hear them talk about Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, that he himself said, if you get a government on the cheap, you'll have a cheap government. And that is true. So we have gotten a government on the cheap, so to speak. We've allowed them to trick us into believing that we can get something for nothing. He was right. But none of them can walk in a Lee Kuan Yew shoes. Not one of them. Lee Kuan Yew and his team in Singapore earned the high salaries before they were paid the high salaries. Look at the history. They gave the people the following: a stable, competent, and effective government, a safe, clean, and orderly society where every Singaporean could live, earn, and retire with dignity. They gave their people a world-class education, healthcare, and housing system that brought out the best in their people. They used the last 25 years, or I shouldn't say the last, but they used the first 25 years of their independence, from 1965 to 1990. They moved their people from a dirty, disorderly, dangerous third world country into a first-class nation. There's no comparison here. The only comparison we should make between Singapore and Jamaica is that those who have been in our government for 80 years cannot come close to what Singapore did in 25 years. That is the comparison. Not about the wages, not about the salaries. Singapore's leaders deserve the salaries they get because they produce the results they produced. Our misleaders are not even worth what they have collected so far. What is to start paying for what we want by building our own political party that's of the people, by the people, and for all the people. And that is the reason why we created the United Independence Congress of Jamaica. We indeed have the blueprint for a better Jamaica. We are the answer to Jamaica's problem. Not me, Joseph Patterson, but we, you and I. We are the ones. If we join hands together, nothing can stop us. If we overcome the mental slavery of being divided into orange versus green, if we overcome the mental destruction of resigning ourselves from politics and say I have nothing more to do with politics, if we overcome those tendencies which they have pushed us towards and decide that we are ready to join hands, that we're ready to be one again, and that we will not allow anybody to come between us, and we decide that we're going to build our own movement. And that's what the UIC is about. We're not perfect because we can't be perfect without you. We need all the skills and competencies that are out there. So if you're a lawyer, we need you. A teacher, we need you. Engineer, we need you. Shoemaker, dressmaker, we need you. Unemployed, we need you. Senior, we need you. Young boy, young girl in high school, college, we need you. We need all of us to pool our time, talents, and treasure together to take back our country. That is our mission now. That is our goal now. We now see the full picture. We now know how them trick we. We have seen it clearly now. The UIC has brought to our attention fully what they've done to us. And the question is, are we willing and ready now to stand up and fight back and take back our country? I hope to see you on June 10th at 4 p.m. at Mandela Park. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And please remember, one Jamaica, we're stronger together. Have a good night. Take care. Oh, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Please share this with all your friends and family. Tell them it's time for us to take back our country or to take charge of our country. Have a good night. All the best.